Ron Avery, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Texas chapter. Briefly, it was 1,000 just a few weeks ago. Now I've read 1,100 architects and engineers have signed on. You've got hundreds of physicists, the number 3 in the Japanese government, the former German defense minister. I mean, 9/11 Truth is on fire. Some national polls, 80+% believe the government's lying. What do you think of this new development that the 9/11 Commission, Ron, was told not to get into the actual attacks and to engage basically in a cover-up?
Well, I don't doubt it. I haven't read that yet. It's news to me as well, but I don't doubt any of it. It's already come out that the attorney, their main counsel, said that at some point in time they decided to lie and not tell the people the truth.
He called it a criminal conspiracy by the Pentagon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't doubt it. There's absolutely upper-level people that are covering up what really happened. And now, when I say that again, that doesn't mean the government, as they always like to say.
The criminal elements in multiple intelligence agencies that stood to gain from new wars and control.
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay. You've got the floor now. I mean, get into whatever you want. Let's get into your, for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers, you've got a basic breakdown of a mini version of what you'll actually be doing at the event coming up from 1 to 9 on Saturday at the Doubletree. Again, everybody call the media, newspapers, TV, radio, tell them, be there and cover it. Send them YouTube clips of international news, been covering it. This is news. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Well, I brought my little easel here, and I am an architect, and one of the things that kind of puzzles me these days is all these fancy automatic computer-generated they even have them animated where they show the plane crashing into the building, and they can really do anything with these computers. I just did this on plain old paper with plain old markers to show you how architects really think. Now, what this is really showing here, the South Tower, of 110 stories, it leans 22 degrees to the west over Building 4, and which is right down here. So what you have in reality, when that happened, it would be something like the Pennzoil building in Houston falling off of an 80-story building. And when I first saw that in reality, it just shocked me. It just
that's roughly 30 stories that fell on a how many story was?
Well, it actually didn't fall. That's why I'm showing this little diagram here. There's something major wrong here, because what we have when we have this spot right here, the way you figure out how to stop a rotation like this once it starts is you take the full height of the part that's rotating, which is 384 feet, and you divide it in half, which is 192 feet, and then you multiply it by the weight of the portion that's falling off, which is 290,000 kips, which is 290,000 or 290 million pounds is what this weighs. And it starts to rotate about this point right here, which is 192 feet away. You end up with a force moment of 55,680,000 foot kips. Now, that's also required to stop that rotation, you see. So where did that come from? It didn't come from anywhere. What should have happened, instead of this happening at the end of it, you should have had this right here. This top portion of the building should have fallen to the ground in one chunk, because it was, if the only way it could have not fallen like that is for it to be demolished from the inside all the way up. And
it was all blown into powdered dust.
Sure. So that the piece couldn't fall, because it also had the demolition charges all set all the way up.
Because there's no way. I mean, if a 30-story chunk of a building breaks off, it's going to fall almost intact.
Absolutely.
And be down on the ground. But no, it doesn't. It just vaporizes.
That's right. And we're expected to believe, and this is basic architecture and engineering right here. I mean, that's as basic as it gets. And we're expected to just ignore that. Let's just ignore the idea that this can happen. Okay, the next theory that they propose is the pancaking theory. Now, we got a real problem with this, because even if you just multiplied the 5 inches of concrete on the steel deck, you get about four stories high of nothing but concrete slab. Well, now the problem there is you've overlooked the steel that's been crushed in between it. So if you crush all the steel in between it, you've got about another 3 feet of steel in between each one. So if it was truly a pancake, what you would have here is 27 stories of crushed concrete and steel in between it. Well, that's taller than the hotel that was right next to it, the Marriott Hotel right next to it.
There was no pancake. It was aerosolized. Right. The concrete was turned, and they said body parts were no bigger than an inch long.
Correct. And the only way you can do that is through explosive charges. That's the only way that can happen.
And you can even see the blast squibs coming out.
Yeah, you sure can. And when you first see it, you're just so astonished with everything. You don't really, it's taken really 9 years to really analyze and understand this. It shouldn't have, because our government really did not analyze it. It's been up to the people, ordinary citizens, to actually investigate this crime. Okay, the next thing we get into, most people don't know that we have a hat truss on the top of this tower.
And guys, zoom in some on this while he's doing it. Go ahead.
Yes. This is a hat truss right here. They call it that. It's a 5-story truss system that sat on top of the building, and it spans from the core, and this is the core showing right here about how big it is. And they first told us it was a hollow tube, which is incorrect totally. And some people even call it a tube within a tube, but the reality of it is it's even stronger than that. It's actually a building inside of a tube. And
we have the former architect and the former builder manager on record before it got hit saying it was over-designed to take 2 big jets.
Well, even multiple. I remember the architect on the actually said that it was multiple impacts of a 707, which is very comparable to the 767. And it was a 4-engine, moved faster, but carried the same.
And it had a
gasoline.
super core, but the media just said there was nothing.
That's right.
Only Casper the Friendly Ghost was in there.
That's holding it up. Now, what this hat truss does, though, if you think about it, it spans 65 feet in one direction, in this longer direction on each side, and 35 feet on the shorter direction on this side. And everybody's familiar with train bridges. You know, those things you drive, these big old train cars loaded with trestles, train trestles. That's what we're talking about. And this one's 5 stories tall. There's one out in McQueenie right next to my tap room that's 3 stories tall, maybe 2.5 stories tall, and it carries and it spans like probably 200 feet, or maybe more, 250 feet, and it's only 2.5 stories. And whereas this one here spans only 65 and 35 feet and is 5 stories tall. And what I'm driving at is you could drive a train and park a train loaded. In other words, this thing can carry a lot of weight. And the North Tower, when it was hit, it's only 8 stories from the top. That means that even if the vertical columns were not connected to each other, they would be held up by the hat truss on the North Tower. So, and all the exterior columns were 100,000 psi steel, the strongest you can get. It's heat treated, and they were 14 inches by 14 inches square, and they actually form what is called a verandel truss. And one of the architects that was working in association with the main architect on this project said that it was just like a 209-foot deep beam is what we're looking at on the sides of this building. So we'll move to the next one, and we're going to what I want to do is get everybody comfortable with the way that this building is really designed. So just proportionately, you can draw a 7x7 square. It's 2 squares on the one side, 2 squares on the other, and 3 in the middle. You got 4 on one side, on the other side, and 1.5 on each end. So now you can sketch this in your sleep if you wanted to and know exactly what the building core was like.
But the media lied and said that didn't exist.
That's right. Said it's not there, and it was all run by trusses, lightweight metal trusses, that went all the way.
That wouldn't even have held the building up. It's just an asinine lie when the plans for the building have been public for decades.
That's right. So, and this part, the middle core, is heavy steel, and with heavy girders. Then there's trusses on that, but they are connected to heavy girders going both ways, connected to heavy steel columns. Now down here in this portion, that does have lightweight steel trusses, but they are also doubled. They're 3 foot deep, and they're doubled, and they go both ways, which means a space frame. And actually, when this building was being designed, the articles and literature on it actually called it a space frame floor, and that's what they had. So in order to have, and we're going to get to that right here, what it looks like. Right here, these trusses are going both ways. So this line right here shows a truss heading that way, and these are trusses heading this way. Now, there is a truss, double truss, that connects every column on the exterior back to the core. And there are trusses at every low part of the web right here that goes the other way. So, in fact, if you look at this, we take a section right here. It's section C. Now, these trusses are running out to the exterior wall. Here's the exterior steel. Here's the interior heavy steel. This corrugated metal decking is running towards the exterior. So it doesn't roll up. If you hit it, it acts as a knife blade because it won't buckle up. It won't roll up because the trusses are actually, the tops of the trusses are poured into the concrete there. The concrete is poured around the tops of the trusses.
So this is built like a brick, you know what house.
Oh, you got it. Now we're getting the idea of what this thing's like. And here's the exterior. This is like I call it a cheese grater. You've got and here's the exterior wall, what it looks like. These things are 3'3" center to center.
And that's why the planes evaporated, but 2 magic passports, not 1, but 2, drifted down unhurt and were found that day by the government.
Yeah, in one piece.
Oh, but it flew into an armored cheese grater.
That's exactly right. And so here's the size of the jet. The fuselage of the jet is the inner red circle. The orange circle on the inside is the size of the jet engine. And you can see what trouble it did when it hit this thing. It is just like a cheese grater. Now, going 530 miles an hour, you got to remember that. If it was at landing speed, it probably would not have pierced the outer wall, and they knew that. See, now that we know that nanothermite has been used on this building, now we know that they planned every piece of it. They planned the speed of the jet. They planned everything about it. Because if they had run it slower,
would have dented the building but bounced off.
Correct. And they didn't want that. And now we know, too, that that's why that building 2 fell first, South Tower fell first, is because the firemen had reached the 78th floor. They were going to put it out. They radioed back.
They were saying the fires aren't even here. This is no big. People were standing next to columns, waving. So it wasn't melting their bodies or even hurting them, but giant columns suddenly melted and blew up. The fires had dissipated. Heat had gone down, but you got to get rid of those firefighters. They're about to find the evidence.
Well, yeah, and if the whole object we now know was to get rid of the buildings in the first place, because they had to remove all this asbestos. Ron,
let me ask you this: we may have to go into overdrive, which will then just be on PrisonPlanet.tv and Infowars.com. Okay. How long is this going to take? I may have to skip this break too.
That's fine. I don't.
It's not good for our affiliates.
Let me see. Let's only do this one more sheet.
No. Do you have to go somewhere?
I don't.
Gentlemen, can we do 20 minutes of overdrive? This is, I'm going to go ahead and take the break because we're on XM and a bunch of AM and FMs coming up. And then we'll have 5 more minutes at the stations here. And what I'll do is in a few weeks, I'll even re-air this in another hour. So the stations all get to air it. But people will have to go to PrisonPlanet.tv or Infowars.com only on those audio streams and video streams to get the rest of this. So I want you to take your time. Continue.
Okay. Well, this now I'm really beginning to get into exactly how these buildings function. As I've talked about before, we have this 5-story hat truss on the top that can work in tension. But actually, the more I study this building, we don't even need the tension. We don't need the tension carrying hat truss because right here is how this is summarized. We know that in here that because it's a space frame floor with trusses running in both directions, that it cannot collapse. It cannot collapse all the way across the floor just because you've damaged a portion of it.